Hey everybody, Christo, your mining coach, and I am so excited about today. We have with us Sheron Kaviua, and in many ways, she's breaking ground in the mining industry in so many ways in Africa, in Namibia, and Sheron is currently a leader of a mining company, and she's only the only female leader of a mining company in Namibia. Sheron, by introduction, is a geologist by training, initial training, with a lot of specialization there, with a master's as well in geology. And then she sort of branched out and did another master's in engineering with mining, did an MBA, more journalist, and now she's leading a mining company in Namibia. In many ways, breaking ground as the very first mineral resource manager in Namibia, then the very first technical services female manager in Namibia, and then the first in terms of an official understudy program to take over a mining company, and now leading a mining company in Namibia. She's also a mother of 3. She's a wife. She's an entrepreneur. She has got various interests in other businesses, and the dream is to, do a PhD in geology and own mining companies and just live a dream of giving back and growing Namibian women and other women in Africa in terms of the mining space. Sheron, good morning and welcome. It's such a privilege and an honor to have you with us and being one of the first being interviewed on the Mining Coach podcast. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Christo. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
And thanks for your time. I could hear that for a moment. I could hear the mining machines there for a moment, which means you're in the office. You're at the mine site at the moment. There's a lot happening. And I know just making the time in your day, very busy mining day, running an operation. And it's not just a mine, by the way. You also on various boards where you're running the clinic in the town, you're running the municipality or the municipal services in the town, you like the mayor of the town, and you also, the mine includes a processing plant, and then all the regional and governmental, conversations, and having those conversations on a national level and a regional level. That's also part of this portfolio of yours. A massive job. And so just taking the time out today to, the purpose of this mining podcast is to add value to younger versions of ourselves in the mining industry, and just teach them or try and help them with building their careers and becoming more successful. And for you to take the time today to do this is just amazing. Thank you so much for that.
My pleasure, Christo.
Anything that I missed in terms of your very impressive career of 20 years or nearly 20 years, or you've been at this specific operation for, I think, more than 15 years. Anything that I missed, anything that you want to tell our listeners about Sheron that I didn't tell them?
100% Christo. I can just add there that currently I'm still the only woman leading a mining company in Namibia. And also I get to practice a little bit of my geology because I'm sitting on 2 boards, actually 3, as a technical board member. Yes. So I'm on the Roshpina board member, the Scorpion or Gergaro board member, as well as the iron ore project, which I own 5%. And I've got another one which we're working with a group of friends called Palmway Streaming, Palmway Royalty and Streaming.
Oh, wow. Yeah, thanks for that, Sheron. That helps a lot. Yes. So I think the purpose of today is to get people, doesn't matter whether they're professionals or not. And now we're talking about a lot of your degrees, and, a lot of us have got a lot of qualifications, but there are some of our listeners that they have a career in mining and they enjoy doing mining, and they don't necessarily aspire to, just get promoted, but they just want to be the best versions of themselves. They may be at an operator or a foreman level or a shift supervisor level or a plant operator level, but they are inspired by leaders like yourself, and They want to become the best they can be. And that's really what this podcast is about. In preparing for this, you and I spoke about what would you like to talk about, and you selected leadership. And I would like to know, why did you do that? Why leadership? There's a lot of stuff that, we can talk about.
100%. I think looking at just companies, either in Namibia and South Africa, companies that mainly are doing well and those that are not doing so well. A good example that we can mention is the cell phone industry, which is well known to everyone. If you look at the BlackBerry, which was an excellent phone, but where is it today? And
Yes.
if you look at Apple, that started later than BlackBerry or Nokia, where are they today?
Yes.
So leadership is quite a very important element that really can drive organization and allow them to be very successful. Hence my choice of leadership. And it's important that we do have not leaders because you are placed there either by virtue of your political association, but mainly having competent leaders in key positions. So, and it's across all industries. Either as a politician, we need strong leaders in the
Yes.
political fraternity. And again, if you come at the entertainment industry, we need those groundbreaking, the movers and the shakers in the entertainment industry. And then back into an area where I play very well, the mining industry, very important. Not only is it important for generating investors value or adding value to the investors, but more so to preserve life, making sure that these operations are managed safely and that communities around those mining operations are taken along the journey.
Wow. And I think even today, as you say, I mean, it's not just about the position of just being that leader, that appointee, but it's a lot more about that. And specifically, I think a lot of our listeners are women, and they've largely been left out of this mining game for a very long time. And you taking a lead in some of, or a lot of that, and helping women to find their voice and find their position in this male dominant society. And yes, so leadership, I can I can just imagine why it's so important for you. But you talk about position. Is there a difference with being a manager? You mentioned, or we've introduced you the very first manager of mineral resources for a mining company in Namibia, and also the very first technical services manager. But is there a difference between being a manager and a leader for you?
100% Christo. I believe that a manager is somebody who adopts a system and ensures that you delegate and you control that system and ensure that everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. So in that case, you don't really innovate. But when it comes to leadership, it's someone who would create a vision that inspires people to follow that vision and work towards achieving that. So the difference is really in terms of the influence. The manager would use procedures and policies to achieve a certain goal, and whereas the leader, it becomes engraved into that person because it's all about how they convey that vision to the subordinates, and how the subordinates buys into the vision, and ultimately the manager, the organization, and the employees, including all the stakeholders, move in that direction. That's how I differentiate the two.
Oh, that's amazing. And I can see the passion you have for this. And if you look at the leadership books out there, and there's actually one book that I once read as part of my studies, and it was a whole book on just what is leadership. And they couldn't really define a single definition for leadership. There were like hundreds of different definitions, and you just captured the essence of that whole research study. Is, if you can describe it in one word, it's influence. And you've just done that. You said it's all about that influence, about inspiring and getting people to, buy into that vision, be part of that vision. You've also talked about inclusion. I've heard you talk about inclusion before. How important is that for you in terms of leadership?
For me, it is very important because ultimately in your team, you don't want just yes sayers or people that think alike.
Yes.
You want diversity. And
Yes.
most important, when you have, because that's the only way you can have people that does not think or only see, look from the same microscope or the same lens as you, but people who would think differently. And ultimately, you would have a lot more options to choose from rather than just having the limited options to choose from. And that might the limited options that you have may not ultimately be the best one. So for you to have to arrive to a best decision, you need to have a variety of options, and that would come from your diverse team. Now, that is step one. And once you've got the diversity, the second part is inclusivity, is making sure that your diverse team provide input. And it's very important. Introvert does not mean that the person or a reserved person does not mean that they don't have great ideas. It's again making sure that everybody is included in the decision making or they air their opinion. So those are the few points I would cover in terms of diversity and inclusivity, and both are very important or relevant towards leadership.
Yeah, we had the privilege of working together. For some of our listeners that don't know, we are ex-colleagues in a way, and we've been in a very close relationship for a long time. And the one thing, just for our listeners, that Sheron has taught me is to make sure everybody's got that voice and balance the conversation and balance all the facts coming to the table. And I remember that one of my mistakes, and we said this podcast is there that we can share with you in a vulnerable way our mistakes and the things we've done wrong. And I can remember clearly the one very tough conversation that you and I had once about the one-sided view of things, and just taking evidence, which was good evidence, facts on one side, and just make that the overwhelming reality for everything. And you clearly helped me to balance all the points of view so that you can make a better decision from all the facts. And where did that come from? How did you land up with just this wonderful leadership concept?
I think it's the type of person I am. I'm driven towards being fair. And being fair, you need to ensure that you listen to all parties involved and making sure that you come to an optimal decision, or at least the outcome should be accommodating to both. And it's never a win for the one party, but it should be a balance of decision there, because you may need to take some from the one party and others from the other, and others from the other party, and then you find a common ground which is best for the team. Because ideally, if, for example, if I bring it to the mining industry, what I'm trying to explain is the fact that something might be very well for the plant, but then looking at the geology, it's going to, or the mining department, it's going to disadvantage the mining department. So a solution to that problem, to the problem or the challenge, would be a middle ground. So it's important that you hear the plant team as well as the mining team, and then create a solution that is good enough for the mining operation itself.
That's a very good example. I love the fact that you're talking very practical here for our listeners. And you mentioned the fact that these different departments are there, and you have to balance the priorities. So the plant on the one side of the mine, and the geology team, and it's maybe a grade conversation, or it's a recovery issue in the plant. Have you found it very difficult to lead in this multi-diverse silo environment with the different departments, pulling and fighting for their own territories?
Yes, definitely. But again, it starts on how you create that path going forward. If your vision is clear, if the team buys in where we want to take the operation, nowadays you can't really talk about long-term planning, but rather if you look at it's quarter one, what is it that we want to achieve in Q1, and you allow all the department to work towards that. For example, we would make a decision that we need to achieve medals for the quota. So it is easier when one party pulls away and a decision that the one department is making is going to disadvantage that vision that you have. It's easy to just remind them that here, hi plant, we are all aiming to get the medal for Q1. And if you do that, the whole team is not going to achieve the medal for Q1. So that is quite important. Once you have that vision and everybody buys into the vision, it's easy to control the different department. But very true, when each department is working at its own, looking at its own benefit and wants to shine alone, then they forget about the bigger picture that the team must achieve. Yeah. And that becomes a challenge because everybody starts pulling in their own direction and they want to shine on by themselves, you know. And as a leader, you are expected to pull everybody together and work towards that common vision.
Yeah, that's amazing insight. Would you mind sharing with us the top 3, if there are, maybe just the 1 or 2 things that stand out in terms of your leadership principles? What's the most important thing? What's at the top of your mind when you engage with people from a leadership perspective?
And you won't believe it, Christo, is actually something that you taught me quite well, I should say.
This is not about me, but thanks.
100%, but I was your subordinate. So most of the leadership elements would definitely come from you. But the most important one was reliability. When you promise or make a commitment that you will achieve this by this date, it's very important that you are reliable and you deliver to that quality. So being reliable is really one, and it's one of the most important ones that would set you apart. For example, if you need to be appointed, let's say for a leadership position, you're supposed to become the next GM, and you've got Sheron, who only started being reliable 3 weeks ago when Sheron heard that this position is up for recruitment. And I started doing everything right and I'm achieving the results for the 3 weeks so that I can stand out. But yet again, you've got Johannes, for example, and Johannes has been very consistent and reliable throughout the years. It's a quick decision, an easy decision to make, even though Sheron is sticking out and you can clearly see it's for the last 3 weeks, but Johannes has been doing it for as long as you know Johannes. It's an easy pick. You will pick Johannes for that role. So for you to be able to be selected for a role or to stand out, reliability is one important one. And the second one that I'll pick is engaging with impact. So again, it draws back to my first example that I made. As a leader, you are supposed to create a vision that inspires your subordinates to follow. So if you are that type of leader, and I can share a few examples on how I've done it exceptionally well throughout the years. When I took over the MRM section, we were quite clear what we wanted to achieve, and we wanted to achieve 2 million tons of added resources to our mineral resource. And the whole team bought into this vision, and commitments were made. And everybody committed to, yes, Sheron, we want to ensure that as a team we succeed. And we actually exceeded that, getting about 2.5 million tons of resources added that year. Wow. So again, as a leader, creating that vision that inspires your subordinates to follow and work towards the value addition, that's an important one. And a third one, it's actually, I would say that they weigh more or less the same, carry the same weight. So I'll add another one. I know you only wanted 3, but the ability to adapt. It's a very important one. Yes. Because working for the mining company that I work for currently, we've had a couple of changes in terms of major shareholders changes, and each company came in with their own strategy, and we needed to adapt, otherwise you would be left out. It included small decisions like changing the software package. And if you were good your previous software and you didn't want to change, you would be left out because nobody will use that software anymore. And the information that you generate might not be compatible with the other softwares. So that's another important one. And the fourth one is deciding with conviction, speed and conviction. That's a very important one. So you need to decide. I can share another, you need to be decisive. You need to know that you have to make the decision. A decision made now may be, it's definitely better than a decision not taken at all.
Yes.
So, for example, I worked so hard for an understudy program to have this GM role. And a month within this role, unfortunately, the majority shareholder filed for creditors protection. And a lot of things came into my mind, like, what do I do? Do I hop and get another job? Because that was the easiest. Or what do I do? I
Yes.
was left with employees that were very worried, a community that was extremely inspired by the RP2, our expansion project. And then all of a sudden, the expansion project was canceled and we had to put a lot of things at hold. And the community was very worried as well. And what made the difference is just my ability to decide that I am going to stay. I am going to ensure that my managers stay as well and create that short-term vision that everybody works towards to. And I should tell you that regardless of all the challenges the company was facing, we managed to have a record annual production.
That's amazing.
Yep.
You've touched on so many things that I can see your eyes lighting up and, the energy just flowing here. And you mentioned such an important concept that I absolutely subscribe to, and that's the commitment to stay and the commitment to be with that team. And a lot of us in the mining industry have been faced, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners, in when it's really tough. And you've mentioned, a change is not easy. When a big change comes, a new shareholder comes, I get a new supervisor. I have had 3 supervisors this year, or I've had 3 engineers that, over the last 3 years, everybody comes with their own ideas and their own plans. And now I have to change again. And this one wants it in this way, and that one wants the report in that way. And I'm so sick and tired of all of this. But you mentioned the 2 things that you mentioned that stand out for me, the agility and the mindset to adapt quickly when these changes happen, because that's the one constant in life we are so sure about. But then you mentioned a very powerful one, and it's also been my experience over many years, that if you commit and your team knows that you committed, and you're not just looking for the next opportunity to either go for more money or another promotional opportunity, but you've actually voiced, you've actually mentioned to people, I'm committed to stay and see this through. That is massive. And how difficult, and if you can help our listeners to motivate them to say, stay just that little bit longer, don't give up. How would you explain that for somebody that's at the point to give up right now today?
I think again, Christo, it's a very challenging one because the easy road is always to change course and go to a successful company. But I think you will have to tie it back to the vision and look at tapping in from past learning or past experience. That is one important one that goes a long way. So if the company has been a very successful company for years with great values, that if you hold on to those, so again, attaching values that supports your vision or your strategy, your strategic goals, that's very important. So if those are interlinked, are well understood by your subordinates, it's easy to influence because you remind them, listen, we've been at this game for more than 50 years. This company has been operating for so long. Major shareholders have come and gone, and the company is still good. And as an entity, this is a profitable company that can really assist the community, including the nation, to make a difference So if you give them a value addition, a reason to stay, it's easy to convince them, really. But let's say if you are in, sometimes it's not always the case that it will always be rosy, where you were sitting in a very good company and things were going smooth, values are aligned to your personal values mostly. Sometimes you find yourself in a very toxic environment. How do you protect yourself in such a toxic environment? So even if you want to change, it's just that you don't fit in there. So having the basics is quite important. And again, those basics comes from Christo, which is the 3 C's. If you have the competency, the culture, and the character, those are the basics. You must have it. You must see if this organization is a good fit for you. So if it's a good fit, by all means stay. But if it does not align with your personal values and they are so far-fetched, in that case, unfortunately, the right move is to really look for a culture you're going to fit in. It will never be 100%, but mostly where you can fit in. So it's a very challenging topic to discuss, Christo, but there are those two scenarios. But if you are in a good fit company, by all means, step into your wisdom, and that will make it easier for you to decide.
That's amazing insight, and thanks for being vulnerable. It was a bit of a curveball question. We didn't share that beforehand, so but thanks for being so open about that. You mentioned something, and I think, and that's maybe the last bit before we wrap up, about being clear and intentional about what you want to achieve. And I want to touch on this a little bit more. I want us to explore this a little bit more, because and once again, this is a sharing for our listeners. There was one time in my career where some of the feedback that I received was that I didn't make up my mind, which do I stand for? Is it the left or is it the right? Is it this way? So in this case, it was a CFO that of the company that said, are you really serious about the cost and running the business, or is it all about production? Are you now the general manager that's pushing production because you keep batting for the production team and you allow the production team to not be cost sensitive? And then on the other hand, you talk to me about that you are cost conscious and you are running this business well as the GM. What is it that you are doing? Are you in this side of the fence or on that side of the fence? Are you, because you're having different conversations in a different way with this group of people, and then you change your mind and it seems that you're saying a different thing with this group of people? And for me, I had to go back and say, well, he's right. He's perfectly right. What is it that I believe? What is it that I stand for? What is it that are my principles in this? Do I believe that it's production beyond all cost, or is cost most important for me right now? And I had to make a decision. And you talk about that intentionality and that decisiveness. And I've had conversations in knowing you, that you are quite decisive and you do make a point when you believe in a point. And for some of our listeners that are sitting here today and they're listening to this and they really struggle to voice what they believe is the right thing, what would your advice be to them, and how do they get their points across, that they can make a point and they can make it respectfully? So what's the learnings, and how did you get to that point where this is so natural for you now? Because it wasn't always easy, I'm sure.
100%, Christo. And I think being exposed to a very agile environment that changes all the time, you've learned to accept that you will never have all the information at a given time to make a decision, or nor will you be in a perfect environment to make a decision. And I think that's where the agility part comes in, where you say that, let me try this option. I've got 3 options, but let me choose this one because the value addition for this one looks a lot higher than the other 3 options. And you allow yourself, you believe in that option, and you allow yourself to move wild with that option. And every 2 weeks sprints, every 2 weeks you come, you look at, are we still moving towards our true north? Are we moving towards achieving the real goal? And it's okay to not always get it right. And when you do not get it right, you must admit that you didn't get it right, and you come and you replan. So those are the two things that I want. The one thing that I wanted to discuss, but the second one is co-creation. Let it not be all about the leader, because if the team created this vision as a team, then it's not about me. When I remind people that, remember, we wanted to be the flagship. It's not Sheron wanted to be a flagship. So again, co-creating that vision and making sure that everybody work towards that vision is something that if you wake me up at 12 o'clock, I'll be able to know that this year we are planning to achieve 1 million tons of resources that needed to be added. And before we mine, we need to have our multidisciplinary reviews, because everybody needs to provide their input so that optimally when we are mining, we are providing the right material that the plant can easily process, so that ultimately the mine can achieve its metal tons for the year. So those are the two things that would help you really make decisions. Be happy with not getting it right the first time, and most importantly, take people along the journey. And one of the other things, Christo, that I would like to mention here is
please.
historically, you always hear the term that it's lonely up there when you go up the ladder. And I can tell you, Christo, that I haven't experienced that. It's so much fun up here because I took everybody along. And at this stage, it's important that you get your information not every week when you've got the management meeting. Every time you engage, you get more information, more input, and that allows you to change your decisions and engage widely. So take the people along the journey, then it won't be very lonely up there. It's going to be fun. Thank you.
It's incredible insight. I really appreciate, and this, unfortunately, we're a little bit pushed for time, but our listeners, there are so many gold nuggets here, platinum nuggets, doesn't matter, diamonds, whatever your precious stone is, or precious metal that you believe in. And Sheron, you touched on so many things, and we'll have to get you back there the next time, because you spoke about if the decision is not right, if there's failures. I'm actually reading a book at the moment about failures, and just being outside in your comfort zone and trying some stuff new. I mean, this is something new for me. Doing this podcast and doing, YouTube is all new for me. I'm totally out of my comfort zone. But I believe that we should help people. I believe that there's an audience out there that need to hear and learn from. You don't have to make those mistakes again. You don't have to repeat what others have. It's not lonely at the top, as an example. That is so different. We hear that it's always lonely at the top. You just made a profound statement saying it doesn't need to be lonely at the top. So anything in closure that you would like to just inspire as a couple of closing remarks before we finish this wonderful session today?
Yeah, Christo. So in closing remark is that when it comes to leadership today, I don't think we need great leaders anymore. I would rather close that we need leaders that can stand out to make the difference. And standing out, you don't have to be the CEO of the company. You can be the cleaner, for example, and you will stand out. If you take a place like the service station, if you come to a town that has multiple service stations, or fuel station, you know exactly which one to go to. And the reason why you go to that fuel station is because the toilet is the cleanest. Who's the standout leader there? It is the cleaner. So I believe that everybody has the ability to stand out as leaders at your level where you are. And it's a matter of playing around with the 4 elements that I've mentioned. It's either that you are very reliable and you produce results consistently, or alternatively, you engage with impact. Other people have got that natural ability to just engage, and then they move the whole masses towards that direction. So a bit of that. And then the other one is being decisive, it's very important, and then being able to adapt. And it's playing and balancing those four. Then you can really stand out. And as I said, you can stand out at any level in any fraternity.
Well, there you go, everybody. Profound words by Sheron Kaviua, our guest today. Sheron, thank you so much. This has been incredibly inspiring for me. You charged my battery today. It's fully charged, it's overcharged. And thank you so much. And thank you to our listeners. Thank you for being on the treadmill or running outside or being on a bike or walking your dog or just, being out in nature or just taking a break in the middle of your day to listen to this. We will bring you this sort of stuff every week. And Sheron, have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you so much to our listeners for listening in and watching on YouTube. We wish you all the best. Happy mining. I just want to take a moment to recap this session of today with 5 things that I've learned from Sheron. The first one, a leader creates a vision and inspires his or her people to buy into that vision and then work towards achieving it. Number 2, there's 4 principles, leadership principles, that stands out for her at the moment. Be reliable, engage with impact, have the ability to adapt, and finally, decide with conviction. Third one that stands out for me for today is be happy not to get it right the first time. Fourth one, she says, it is not lonely at the top as a leader. It's only lonely if you don't take your team along with you to the top. That's great. And finally, you can stand out as a leader at any level in the organization. If you're a cleaner, then be the best cleaner of toilets there is in the organization. You will stand out and you'll be recognized as a leader. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching.